Hey guys, welcome to the Speak Strength podcast. My name is Jason Winley. I am your host, and today I have with me Mrs. Janet Bowen. She is a preschool teacher at Gateway Baptist Church, and she was my son's preschool teacher. And we started training about 2 years ago. It'll be 2 years in May, and I've been really impressed with the way she conducts herself and her passion for education and what she does with the students. And I was really impressed with how Austin ended preschool going into first grade. So I wanted to bring her on so we can talk about some of the conversations we've had in the past. And Janet, if there's anything you'd like to say to introduce yourself, go on ahead.
Well, good morning, because we are doing this on a Saturday morning. And I'm just excited to see what I can share that might be helpful to some of you out there.
Cool deal. All right, so just to give you guys a heads up, Janet went from teaching high school to preschool, and now she's been in the preschool for 19 years. Janet, can you tell us a little bit about your transition from going to high school to preschool, or maybe what your educational background was in the beginning?
Sure. So I graduated from Columbia College back 30 plus years ago, and began teaching at Gilbert High School. My major was special education, but my certification was K through 12. I actually did my student teaching right here in Lexington 5 at Nursery Road Elementary School. And that was at a kindergarten classroom. It was in a kindergarten resource room. So you have a mixture of children in there. So from there, I was hired at Gilbert High School and started in the fall of '89 and worked there for 5 years. While there, I was a cheerleading coach. Because all new teachers get assigned whatever task someone else doesn't want to do or what's open, and that's just kind of the way it fell. I enjoyed it. It was fun working with the cheerleaders. It was something I was not used to. I didn't cheerlead in high school myself.
We'll come back to the cheerleaders. Let's talk about you said you had your degree or your specialization was in special ed, and then you went special ed K through 12.
Correct.
So did you work with special ed in high school also?
I did. So I taught special ed there. I had my own resource room, which was a combination of students who were being pulled out for like one class period a day to work on specific issues that they had, whether it was a learning disability in reading or writing or math. I worked with students at the high school level, basically those that needed to pass exit exams.
Gotcha.
For high school that included, they didn't know how to write a simple 5-paragraph or 5-sentence paragraph or 5-paragraph essay, either one, whatever they needed to do to get past that so they could graduate.
So you only pulled them out for one class period? I've heard.
Correct.
I'm not super familiar with how it goes now in the current public school system, but from what I understand, they're in class all day in some special ed classrooms, and I guess that's different than what you were taught. Have you heard anything about what it's like now and then what it was like when you were in high school as far as working with special ed or when you were teaching at high school level?
It's still both. It's still both. I mean, they may be pulled out for all day, but they can also just have a special ed teacher that is their advocate, that's there maybe to read tests aloud to them,
Gotcha.
Which I did some of that also. But then I was also in the regular English classroom for 9th and 10th grade English, and while I was in that room, I was serving the students that were designated with a specific disability. Okay. But I also helped the basic children as far as strategies for learning. I was there for 5 years.
Did you find it helpful, or some of the special ed skills, or I'm not sure exactly what it would call it, but stuff that you
strategies.
Learned, yeah, strategies. Some of the special ed strategies work well for those in a regular class?
Oh, absolutely, because these were kids that just needed they needed study skills.
Gotcha.
They needed basic how to monitor the errors in their writing, how to write a sentence. And just because they didn't qualify under state guidelines to have that label of being learning disabled or whatever. Yeah. So absolutely, it was a help. And that was a trend back then also, is to not label kids as much as possible, just because of the stigma that was associated with the label.
That makes sense. I can see that. So coming from special ed, doing your student teaching at Nursery Road, then to high school, But you said you're only in the high school for 5 years. What was the transition from high school? What was the next step before you got into preschool?
So I had my own children, and we decided that I was going to stay home with them. But when my son, who's now 23, was in the 4K program at Gateway, the director there, Cheryl Cavan, knew my background and asked if I'd be interested in a position there. And wasn't certain about it, but I gave it a try. And again, it gave me opportunity to still be with my family for most of the day. My daughter was already in elementary school at that time, and then the following year they were both in elementary school. So I had the mornings where I was working, through maybe 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and then was home for them in the afternoons and summers. So,
that's pretty.
And the transition was not that hard. Kids are different, obviously. 4-year and 5-year-olds are different than teenagers, but yes. The transition was really not that hard. I mean, for people that love teaching, as long as I can see some sort of progress, it's different. Obviously, you're teaching alphabet versus writing an essay,
right?
But it's much the same in that watching kids learn, seeing that light bulb go off, that's pretty special.
What were some similarities in teaching preschool and teaching high school? I'm assuming there's certain things in which specifically, regardless of whether it's a 4-year-old or a 14-year-old, that you can kind of connect with them through certain strategies. Is there anything specific along those lines?
Well, with special ed, obviously, I used a lot of multisensory approach, meaning they can use as many senses as possible to learn. So seeing it, touching it, hearing it taught, watching it modeled, but then having a chance for active learning also. As many ways as you can possibly get that, whether it's the letter A, letting them write it in sand so that there's tactile there. Watching you model it, hearing you talk about it, just the multisensory approach, whether you're older or younger, because everybody learns differently. So you try and get as many of those learning styles involved, whether you're 4 or whether you're 14.
Good deal. What was it like seeing your first set of high school students graduate?
It made me feel old.
Did it?
It made me feel old. And the thing with teaching, this is a huge difference in the two age groups. When I was expecting my first child, my students all, were like, "Oh, are you feeling okay today? Is there anything we can do for you?" And if I wasn't feeling well, early stages of pregnancy aren't great.
Right.
And, I could give them an assignment and then I could try and make it through the day. With 4-year-olds, you're on from beginning till the end.
It requires your attention.
Exactly. So, but they're so forgiving and they want to please you. They want to do anything they can. Teenagers, not so much.
Fair enough. Teenagers may question you or talk back from time to time.
Exactly.
Not that a 4-year-old doesn't, but I feel like you can put a 4-year-old in their place a little bit easier than a high school student.
True.
So let's go back to cheerleading. So were you a cheerleader growing up? How did you get into coaching?
I was not a cheerleader, but when I was asked to do that, I wanted the job. So sure, I'll do that. But we do have to go through extensive training because there's lots of safety precautions. I had to learn how to drive a bus. I had to get my CDL. That was funny. I'm not very tall, so it was a effort to reach the door to unlatch on the school bus. Just little things like that. But it was a good skill. Hey, I drove the activity bus. But cheerleading is a sport, and
absolutely.
Challenges, late practices, late nights, games were late. It was a whole different thing for me.
Good deal. So we'll move on from cheerleading because I do want to know, you've done really well with my son who's now in first grade, and he was able to remember a lot of the things you taught him as far as writing and some of the numbers, and you did really well. Are there any particular strategies for preschool that you think will be useful for other preschool teachers who may be teaching? Or are there any particular curriculums that you think are amazing?
Well, definitely the curriculum that we adopted probably 8 years ago is called Learning Without Tears. And it started as a handwriting program,
Uh-huh.
but it is incredible. And it does teach handwriting and numbers, and it goes all the way through high school at this point. It started out as like a kindergarten level, preschool, get set for school kind of thing. But it has evolved, and it's incredible. I definitely, if I were not teaching, I would be an advocate and work for the company. That's how strongly I believe in it.
Gotcha. All right. So also, aside from preschool, you also help catering, and some of our conversations, they veer into food. I don't know if the right language is, but I guess you have a good palate. I don't know. Tell us one or two of your favorite recipes, something you like to cook at home, something you like cooked for you. Let's go there.
Well, yes, I have worked with a friend of mine who has a catering company in Irmo, and she's quite skilled. I've learned a lot from her. I always like to cook, and it's been a passion for a long time. I've been called a foodie more than once.
I'm still waiting for your own personal blog.
Yeah, I really enjoy. I really do enjoy cooking, and I enjoy tasting. And but it's got to be quality. So I'm really picky in a restaurant. I do like to take a night off and go out to dinner, but I usually, if I'm ordering out, I'm not gonna order something I would typically cook, because most of the time I enjoy cooking, what I make, more so than what someone in the restaurant business is going to do. But recipes, I love fish. We love fresh fish of any kind, whether it's saltwater or freshwater. We love fish and shrimp. And I kind of I'll build a meal around the protein. So like if I'm going to do fish, then it's like, okay, what carbohydrate would go with that I would like. So whether it's pasta or some type of rice.
Gotcha.
And then for me, there's got to be something colorful green on my plate. So with asparagus or any kind of fresh veggies, they're really, other than broccoli, which I have a huge aversion to back from a pregnancy. But other than that, pretty much, thankfully, my husband will try anything once. I don't know. Recipes are one of those things for me. My family's always saying, "Can you make that again? Please tell me you have a recipe." I love to pour through cookbooks. I love to watch cooking shows, so I can see what others do. And then sometimes I just take what I like best out of several recipes and kind of build my own. So.
Are you an internal critic when it comes to watching the cooking shows? Are you questioning, like, oh, maybe you shouldn't have done that. Maybe if I add this here, it might make it a little better for my taste?
Yes and no. Measurement cracks me up sometimes when they tell me it's a half cup and I just see them pouring. But that's why I don't like baking, because baking is definitely more scientific. Cooking, definitely I can, taste. It is about taste and preference.
Right.
But yeah, I may think it, but I'm certainly not going to voice whatever criticisms I have.
Criticism can be mean if you watch chat boards or if you watch the messages underneath whatever videos come up on social media. People are rough sometimes. So let's go into that transition from being stay-at-home to going into preschool. How did you handle that?
It really wasn't. I'm a doer. I have to be doing something. So even when I was staying at home, I was always doing something.
So since James is already in school, it's really just a matter of you put him in school for that first part of the day. You're already active, so it really just didn't change much of your routine, I'm guessing.
Correct. I would run errands or whatever I had to do while he was in school until I started, working at the preschool. But even then, my days are so filled, I don't know where the time goes. Because, I do take care of the household. We're every day working out is a priority for me. Type of workout, some type of movement, usually twice a day. And then I've got work in between and, preparing meals, planning meals, taking care of the house. Yeah.
And so
homemakers don't sit idly, or at least this one doesn't.
Absolutely not. I understand that too. So you've been married. Your husband, his name's Brian, correct?
Correct.
And how long have you guys been married?
31 years in May.
30. Oh, that's coming up. That's in a month. Oh, that's pretty awesome. So 31 years is a very long time. Obviously, there's been ups and downs. Can you tell us a little bit about the strategies you and your husband used to stay connected and to make something work for that long a period? Because that's an amazing time period. And obviously, there's going to be hard times. There's going to be extremely good times. And you've had 2 kids.
Exactly. So I think marriage, it is work, and it's something that it evolves.
Right.
You have stages. You have the bliss of newlyweds.
Mm-hmm.
But in that, even you have, oh my goodness, we're living together now. He has habits I didn't know about.
Right.
So you have to learn to live with those, and work through them. And then you introduce kids, and that's a whole nother dimension.
Oh, yeah.
And then for us, raising the kids, my husband went back to school while we were, both kids were active in sports after school. He was back in school. So, I felt like the mom having to do it all. That was a very stressful time for us because he worked all day, then was in school at night. And then, I would hardly see him maybe 2 hours a day at the most.
Oh, wow.
And,
yeah.
I was running kids, all over Columbia for sports. So that was probably a really rough time.
And that was but it was a time period, right? Almost, I guess.
Yes, it's a season.
A season. Yeah. And I guess being in a season might seem like it's tough at the time, but you have to recognize that the season will fade and the season will pass.
Exactly. Exactly. So
go
ahead.
Are there any pieces of advice you would give, anything specific, if you had to say, this is one thing for sure you need to, when you're married, this is what it's going to be like. And don't expect it. I guess I want to say just don't expect it to be the same from the time you got married to the time you travel through the whole journey. But is there anything that you would say specifically?
Well, early on, growing up, I was a Christian, I was a believer, and Brian was new to the faith when we started dating. He was a baby Christian, but he grew and grows every day. He makes it a priority to read every day and work on his relationship with the Lord. And that's important for us. So I would say Christ is at the center of our marriage for sure. But we also, and I was thinking about this, we read relationship books.
Right.
There are a lot of good ones out there. There are some not so good ones. And I think of it like when I'm reading a relationship book to work on marriage or whatever specific thing I'm struggling with at that time, I think of it as, and I heard this from some speaker one time, you're in the grocery store. Do you buy everything off the shelf? No. You pick those things that apply to you. So use the grocery store method when you're reading those books. Only buy what it is you need at that time.
Right.
You may need the other ingredient later in your marriage or in your life. But for, at that time, whatever is speaking to you is probably what you need to pull off the shelf.
Gotcha. For yourself as well, too. Not like.
Correct.
There's been times, where you read something, you're like, oh, and you can think of in your head. I'm pretty sure everybody's gone to this point where like, I know this applies to such and such person and not myself, right? Like this is for them. But really, when we read stuff like that, we need to take them in and internalize them and figure out how it affects us. How can we be better? How can we be made better by what we're taking in?
Right. Absolutely. So being that, and we made a commitment. We made a commitment, and we stand by that.
Gotcha.
Now that means at times we have to make compromise.
Right.
We do. You just have to compromise. And as you're talking about, no kids, then kids in college, and then one kid leaves home. And now for us, both kids are gone. A lot of marriages fall apart after the kids are out of the house because guess what? Now you don't have anything in common.
Right. Fair enough.
And so that's a whole nother stage of your life. And for us, it's been a kind of cool thing. Once the kids were out of the house, it's like, okay, it was like one responsibility that we didn't have to worry about so much. So then we could work on us again.
That's pretty cool. So you guys can get back into that courting part of your relationship again. And,
exactly.
And date each other.
And make it a priority. You have to make that a priority.
That's pretty cool. So the things I've got so far, we've talked about Christ being the center of your marriage. You've used commitment, compromise. things change. So I'm guessing you have to change with it, right?
Correct.
Good deal. So we're looking
at. And then the other thing I would add to that is communication.
Gotcha.
Which there would be another C. If you were picking out C's, there's another C.
I was going with the C's. It was actually kind of cool. We were moving on that. So you said so far, Christ, commitment, compromise, change, and communication. And I would call those Janet Bowen's 5 C's of marriage. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely communication, because, in a world where everybody's on social media and text messages, and, text messages are one way to communicate, but sometimes it's not the best way to communicate, because I may be putting voice to something that's not in that message. So.
Right. The tone matters when we're having communication, like our verbal tone, what you sound like, even facial tone. But I would imagine that was kind of the thought too back when, obviously technology changes, but when phone first came and someone was like, well, if I can't see them, I don't know what they're meaning. And so much more so with text message, because in verbal, you can at least hear what's going on in their voice. Sometimes that can be mistaken too, but I'm actually really thankful for the ability to be able to see people and talk, because back in the 90s, the only way we thought about that was through that movie Back to the Future.
That's true.
And now we do the exact same thing with little tiny boxes that we carry in our pocket. It's actually really cool.
Right.
Cool deal. So let's talk about fitness. So we've been training for almost 2 years, and you're one of the most dedicated people to your fitness. You wake up, you get it done. And then, like you said earlier, you do it twice a day. Tell me a little bit about how fitness became such an important part of your life.
Okay, so always active, even growing up. Church softball, marched in the band, which, believe it or not, that takes stamina.
Oh, absolutely.
It really does. You're out on that pavement for a long time.
We have a couple. We have a couple of band members here, and during their band, right before competition season, I would call it their band preseason. They are 2 weeks of 8 a.m. to almost 8 p.m. of work. Those guys have to stay in shape. It's tough if you're not in shape and you go out on the out with the marching band.
Right. So in college, as most people do, put on the freshman 15. Didn't really like how I looked. I wasn't fat, but I didn't like myself very much. But then went through an illness and dropped a good bit of weight and liked myself a little bit better. So then kind of fell into a not so healthy pattern of, let's see how much weight I can lose kind of thing.
Right.
Just had a battle with food.
Yeah. Did you ever find yourself saying, if I eat this, I have to do this much exercise?
Absolutely.
Gotcha.
Absolutely.
That seems
and in a not healthy way, it was definitely a food for calorie exchange, constantly a battle in my head. Like, I can't eat. And it wasn't, what can I do? It was, I can't eat this because I haven't done this.
Gotcha.
And had a few meltdowns here and there, like, because I ate something I felt like I shouldn't have eaten, and then totally had a emotional breakdown on that day.
Oh man, that's always intense. That's tough. But you seem to have grown through that. Was there anything that you kind of implemented, or that did someone come and swoop down and kind of take you along their side? How did that turn out that you were able to get past that process?
I had a personal trainer. Well, first of all, I had a doctor who tried to intervene.
Gotcha.
She didn't like what she saw in a year's time. Just
of weight loss?
Back for, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she didn't think mentally I was in a good place either.
Gotcha.
So instead of turning to her, I turned to the gym and a personal trainer who started putting some goals out there. Told me not just exercise to exercise, but if you're going to ride your bike, maybe you want to race.
Find a race to
sign up for a race, right? And I had run some, and so I ended up signing up for a triathlon at the time, and had to learn how to swim a little bit better and get through that swim. But love cycling and enjoyed running. That led to training for half marathons after that, and I've run several. My thing is, if I set a goal, I'm not going to do it unless I can do it well.
Right.
So when I do get into the training, I'm gonna do everything I can to do the best job I can. And that's me mentally.
Yep.
I mean, that's who I am. So.
And then after talking with someone who overlaps our circles, they said they remember you had a birthday in which you said, hey, I am this particular way. Just again, like you said before, setting a goal. You said, I have to get to this age and I want to be at this particular, whatever it was, at 40. And that's apparently when you started really getting onto another aspect of your training?
Correct.
So tell me a little bit about that.
40 was huge. It really was. It just messed with my head. Like I felt like I was getting old, but I didn't want to be old anymore. So again, just training big time, lost the weight again. Cycling is an amazing way to lose weight.
Yeah.
I don't really have all the science behind that, but it works. I know it works. But in 2014, I had a fall, not while working out, just in the home. I fell and fractured my arm in 15 different places. And 2 surgeries later, that took the wind out of my sails. I couldn't go run. I was lying in the hospital bed asking the surgeon, when can I go for a run, which was obviously not possible at the time.
Right.
But I did get out there with a hard cast on, a couple months later. But right. But then a couple of years ago, I realized, my training had not been the same since that fall, really. And that's when, having met you, I was like, okay, how can you get me strong again?
Yeah.
And that was really my main reason for coming to you. I mean, sure, I'd like to lose weight too, but to me, there's a balance between a healthy weight and strength. And I don't know. At this point in my life, at 50 something, I'm looking for overall health. Am I strong? Right. Am I at an okay weight? Yeah. And am I active every day that's possible? So.
And that's a healthy outlook. There's only so much we can do for weight loss. Weight loss can't be a continued goal. It's not a sustainable, I'm always losing weight. I'm always losing weight. I'm always losing weight. And that's one thing you were able to come through with is and understand that there's to be a point in which I can lose weight and I can maintain. But at some point in time, if I keep losing weight, then I'm not strong. I can't be active. I just have to be able to stay healthy, stay active, stay strong, keep moving, and I can enjoy life and still be healthy, strong, and enjoy my cardio activity as well. It's not an over-the-top look. I think that's one thing.
And that's the biggest thing I have learned, honestly, from being at Body Shop with you guys. I mean, you're very encouraging. I'm lifting heavier weight than I've ever imagined I would lift, which isn't much, but still, I generally feel strong. And
absolutely.
And I still enjoy the cardio, but I don't feel like I'm a cardio junkie anymore either.
Right. There's a healthy balance in that, and the way you eat very healthily. You do your cardio at a healthy rate, and you do your strength training at a healthy weight. It's been an amazing journey watching you train. So I really appreciate you letting us take the time to train you. I also really appreciate the time. I think we're coming up upon our time right now. Is there anything you'd like to add as we end our conversation today?
Well, I was just thinking spiritually about what's going on right now in the world with this virus and stuff. And you've given me a verse or two that I've held on to, but I was looking through some stuff this week, knowing we were going to have this conversation. And I found a verse, and I just want to share it. It's from Hebrews. Chapter 10, verse 23, given what we're going through now, this just really spoke to me. It says, let us hold unswervingly to the hope we profess, for he who promised is faithful. Right. And I think in this day, with all that's going on, hold on to that. Yeah. He's faithful, and he's going to get us through this too.
Absolutely.
So keep him first.
Yep. Keep him first.
And,
be faithful.
And it'll all be good.
Absolutely. Well, I really appreciate your time. I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and I'll see you first thing at the beginning of the week.
That's right, Monday morning.
Thank you guys for watching and listening to Speak Strength Podcast. Hopefully you guys got a lot of nuggets out of that, and we will see you guys next time. Have a wonderful week.